Hi, magic lovers. It's Tracy back with another reading from The Golden Telescope, Book 1 in my Jack and the Magic Hat Maker series. Before I get started reading, I wanted to address my last episode, episode 9, which I promised I was going to have that uploaded for Wednesday. And I did record it on Wednesday. However, I discovered something unfortunate. And that is, if you watched it all the way through to the end, you will notice, or you will have noticed, that at about minute 33 to 34, there's a glitch right when Arthur is looking at the globe. And it's supposed to say Portland, Oregon right there. And it does say that. However, the thing that I discovered is that while I was recording, because I was recording a longer episode than usual, for some reason, my phone stopped recording at that point and then just immediately started a new video without any indication on the screen whatsoever. So I don't know if my phone has a max amount of time that I can record. But anyhow, I had to stitch that together for you. There was a little glitch there, and I apologize for that. Please forgive that little incident. Because of that, I won't be making this video as long as the last one. I'll probably keep it right around 30 minutes. But I did want to mention that because I am aware that it's there, but I decided to go ahead and upload it anyway, rather than recording all over again. So anyhow, there's that. It's mostly complete, so I figured you get, almost the entire reading. So anyhow, on this episode, I'm going to be reading chapter 16, Escape. Before I do that, please take a moment to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Be sure to hit the little bell so that you get notifications every single time I upload new content, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And if you like my reading, I hope that you will give me a thumbs up so that other people can find me on YouTube. That said, let's get going with the reading. And by the way, I may read more than just chapter 16. We'll see how long it takes. So we'll see how this goes. Chapter 16, Escape. Portland, Oregon, present day. Crap! Bart balked as the two boys stopped, out of breath, just as the train pulled away from the station. I hate it when that happens. He threw his hands in the air in exasperation as they watched their ride move down the tracks. Jack bent over and placed his hands on his thighs to recover from the mad dash they'd made trying to reach the train on time. With one long exhale, he stood erect again to face his friend. Guess we'll just have to wait 15 minutes for the next one. He shrugged and looked behind them, spying a vacant city bench. He flopped down on the cold metal seat without waiting for Bart to follow. Buzz, buzz. Bart's phone vibrated in his pocket. I'll bet that's my mom, he said, digging into his shorts to pull his cell out. Close, it's Pop, he said as he swiped across and read the text. I'm sure they're expecting me home for dinner. His eyebrows furrowed. He's wondering where I am, and if you're still with me. I texted Mom when I was leaving school to let them know I was meeting you downtown, he said, and he began composing his response. The reply came almost instantaneously. I'm right around the corner. Head to the shop, and I'll give you guys a ride. Bart read it out loud. Brilliant! Jack grabbed his backpack off the cement and threw it over his right shoulder. Let's head! And so the two of them stood up and headed back toward Flanagan. Flanagan's. Halfway between Davis and Second, Jack glanced behind them, not for the first time. A creeping sensation was crawling up his spine as he spied the shadowy figure walking about 100 feet behind them. Edging closer to Bart, he leaned in to whisper, "Hey, don't look now, but I think that guy might be following us." "Which guy?" Bart asked, and instinctively started to turn his head when Jack stopped him. "I said don't look. Geez." And Bart looked at Jack instead. "There's a guy back there with a beard and a black beanie. I noticed him standing across the street from the hobby shop when we came out. He also went to catch the same train we did. No biggie there. But then, when we left to head back this way..." Jack quickly glanced over his shoulder again before meeting Bart's eyes. "Seems pretty suspicious, if you ask me." "Yeah, especially considering..." Bart's words trailed off as he began waving his arm aggressively at his dad, who was standing outside Flanagan's, facing their direction. "Thank God!" Bart exclaimed, and they both began running toward Bill. "Hey, boys! I was lucky enough to grab a parking spot right in front," Pop said, as both boys opened doors on the green SUV and climbed in. Once they were all inside with the doors closed, Bart blurted, "Hey, Dad, see that guy over there in the black beanie? Jack thinks he might be following us." He discreetly motioned in the man's direction. Bill casually glanced in the rearview mirror. "Really? Why do you think that, Jack?" Bill turned to gaze at Jack in the back seat. Jack replied, telling him the same thing he told Bart, then added, "It freaks me out a bit." Bill glanced again out the window, Jack following his gaze, and to his surprise, the man was no longer there. Bill sighed. "I don't blame you for being freaked out, Jack. And it's no accident that I'm here right now, either." "I know something is going on with you two." Bill looked intently at Jack, then Bart. Bart turned to Jack and rolled his eyes. Jack's reaction was similar, and he spoke first. "What do you mean you know something is going on with us?" Bart quickly interjected, "Yeah, I'm sorry we're so late today. The time just really got away from us. I didn't mean to make you and Mom hold dinner for me or anything." He looked pleadingly at his father, his eyes big and innocent. "This doesn't have to do with dinner time, Bart. It has to do with why that guy is following Jack. There are things we need to talk about." Bill paused while the impact of his words sunk in. "But not here," he continued. "Let's park somewhere that's not downtown. We can drive through and grab food on the way. I'm sure you guys are starving." Bill turned the keys in the ignition and the engine rumbled to life. "Oh, and you'd better text your aunt and uncle and let them know you got sidetracked and are heading home." "I'll make this as quick as possible," he said, not taking his eyes off the road. The two boys sat, occasionally shooting a worried glance at one another, while they endured the ride in silence. Bill drove through a local burger place, then headed up into the hills overlooking the city. He found an isolated spot, brought the vehicle to a stop, then turned around sideways to face the boys. Time for total transparency, yeah?" And when he got blank stares back from them, he continued, "I'll go first." Bill took a long sip from his soda, then took a deep breath and opened his mouth to speak. "I knew something was happening with one or both of you as of this morning, but I didn't know exactly what. I still don't, for that matter. But for lack of a better way to explain it, I sensed an unusual energy in the shop this morning, and I knew the two of you were there before school. Oh, dear God, not you two, Jack exploded. I thought of all people, you were normal. This is so completely and utterly screwed up. He was running his fingers through his hair, rubbing his forehead, and squirming in his seat all at the same time. Calm down, Jack. You need to listen to what I have to say. I promise it will make sense, though I'm sure you are going to be more than a little weirded out by some of the details. Bill clearly wasn't mad at them. In fact, his demeanor suggested that he was almost apologetic about what he was about to share. Let me start by saying that I knew your dad, Jack. Your real dad. He emphasized the last part. Ross and I were best friends when we were kids, back in Ireland. He's the reason I moved to Portland. He finished, watching Jack warily. Jack's face felt hot, and the color drained from his cheeks. The anger he felt before was completely gone, replaced by shock and confusion. What do you mean? How is that even possible? He sat forward, new interest registering on his face. Well, we can go into how it's possible later when we have more time. For now, I need to give you the concise version so that your aunt and uncle don't suspect anything. And he shot a knowing look in Jack's direction. Yes, I know about them, too, though far from everything. But I felt some strange energy coming from them before this, so I'm constantly on guard where they're concerned. For brevity's sake, you're going to have to be content with this much. Your grandfather, Sir Edward MacPaden, contacted me shortly after your parents were killed in that car wreck 9 years ago. He knew of my particular gifts and asked that I look into the circumstances surrounding their deaths. He wanted me to find out if there was more to it than a simple automobile accident. He focused intently on Jack. Let me further say that I recognize a shift in your energy, Jack. I felt it this morning, and I'm feeling it now. Something is dramatically different about you, and it's magical in nature. Bart and Jack looked at one another with bewilderment on their faces. So, a couple of things, Bill continued. Jack, your dad also had magical abilities, though he denied them and wanted to have nothing to do with that world. He paused and turned toward his son. Bart, I'm really sorry you have to learn about all of this right now. I was hoping to share this information with you privately. But you should also know that, because of my particular bloodline, you also have abilities, though they haven't revealed themselves yet. Without warning, Bart's astonished gaze shifted away from his father's face. He grabbed his belly, opened the car door, and vomited all the dinner he had just consumed onto the ground outside. Bill looked at Jack, then reached across to the glove compartment, grabbed a package of wet wipes from within, and sat them on the armrest for Bart. I know this is tough news for both of you to process, but you must be aware of the kind of forces you are dealing with. Bill shifted in his seat and looked directly at Jack. I believe you're in danger, Jack. Possibly even mortal danger. I don't have time to mince words. We need to get you away from your aunt and uncle. I don't know all the details, but I believe you're right about the guy who was following you. And one more thing. I also know that telescope I found last night is some kind of magical instrument. Did you touch it, Jack? Is that what happened this morning? Bill's eyes might as well have been drilling holes right through Jack's forehead, for the intensity of them at that moment. "Yes, I did touch it," Jack confessed. "But my mind is a mess right now. Why, what is all of this about? I don't understand," Jack said. His brown eyes were welling up with tears, and it was all he could do to choke them back, preventing them from spilling over and streaming down his cheeks. He wasn't sure where they had come from, but the mention of his parents, along with the craziness of his current situation, likely played a part. Bill pressed his lips together tightly and nodded. "I thought so. I'm afraid we don't have the luxury of time to go into all of that right now. Job one at this point is to keep your aunt and uncle pacified until we can arrange for your escape. I have contacts in the order, but I will need some time. A day tops. Are you okay with that?" he asked Jack, while Bart was wiping his mouth and face with moist towelettes. Jack nodded. "Yes, I think I can convince my aunt and uncle that everything's fine. But what about that guy? If he was following me, then he knows I'm with you. Do Uncle Earl and Aunt Lizzie have any idea about your abilities?" Jack's eyes widened with realization. "I don't believe they do, but there's no way to be completely sure," Bill confessed. "And you're right about the man following you. Just be honest with your aunt and uncle. Tell them I gave you a ride, and we drove through to grab some dinner. That should satisfy them. For the time being. In the meantime, pack a small go bag and be ready to dash at a moment's notice. Watch for a text from Bart. I will communicate my progress through him." And Bill looked at his son, raising an eyebrow as if to confirm that was okay with him. "Yeah, of course. Sounds like a good plan," Bart whispered, clearly not in any state of mind to be chatting. "Okay," Bill said, sticking the keys back in the ignition. "I really apologize for blasting you with all of this info, but I had no choice. Let's take you home now. We'll plan to get you out of there tomorrow night, if not sooner." And that's the end of chapter 16. And I'm only at not even 18 minutes yet, so I'll go ahead and read chapter 17, Confrontation. Portland, Oregon, present day. "Come through the main entrance when you get home, Jack. Your uncle and I want to speak with you." The text came from Aunt Lizzie in response to the message Jack sent her. He shared the info with Bill and Bart as they drove toward his home. "Good luck with that," Bart scoffed. "I wonder what they want to talk to you about now. The guy they have tailing you?" His irritation was obvious. "Yeah, I guess I better act like I don't know about him. I'll text you after and give you the details," Jack said, as they pulled up in front of the house and he grabbed the door handle to get out. "Thanks for trusting me with that info, Pop," he said, trying to smile at Bill as he climbed out. "I really am confused about all of this right now, but it helps, in a strange sort of way, to know I have you." He got out of the car and looked at Bart. "Wish me luck," he said, slamming the door closed. It was weird going up the stairs to the front door, something he hadn't been allowed to do before now. So he was cautious as he turned the brass knob before stepping into the beige stone and polished maple foyer. "Oh, good. We're glad you're home," came Earl's familiar voice from the front room. "Come on in. We've been waiting for you." Jack walked past where they were sitting and into the kitchen. "Let me just put my stuff in here first," he said, as he walked, glancing in their direction. He dropped his backpack and jacket onto a kitchen chair, then paused to take a deep breath before he turned around and entered the formal living room where both his uncle and aunt were sitting. Aunt Lizzie seemed a little annoyed, but she tried to cover it with a plastic-looking attempt at a smile in his direction. "You've eaten then, dear?" she asked, in a sticky, sweet tone of voice he was not used to hearing from her lips. "Yeah, Bart's dad bought us some drive-through burgers and fries," he said. Jack hated this kind of small talk, especially when he knew there was something else lurking behind the facade, just waiting to jump out and bite him in the butt. "Oh, good. That was very thoughtful of him," Aunt Lizzie said, then took a sip of the pale yellow liquid in the crystal goblet she held in her right hand. She glanced then at her husband, an indication that she was relinquishing the floor to him for the heavy lifting part of the discussion. "You've been gone quite a long time today, Jack." He paused briefly, then continued. "And since you were with Bart, following our earlier conversation, we expect you probably shared at least some of that information with him." The lilting intonation at the end of his sentence made it clear he was asking a question and wanted a response. "Well," Jack began slowly, not sure how much he should reveal. "Bart has been really worried about me since what we thought was a seizure happened this morning. So I did tell him that I didn't have a seizure. But that magical crap you told me about? How was I supposed to expect him to believe that? I don't even believe it myself." He figured if he threw it back in their laps, then hopefully he could avoid having to say too much. Lizzie and Earl stared through Jack for a couple of moments, then looked at one another, and then back at Jack again. "How did you explain your event this morning then, Jack? And where were you all day?" Earl was no idiot. Jack's brain was spinning out of control. How was he going to get out of this mess? I told Bart that after talking to you guys and telling you the details, you decided it was best to watch and see if the event repeats itself. But that we shouldn't worry about it if it happened to be a one-time random event." Jack hoped the explanation would satisfy them. "As far as where I was all day? There was a cool Lego exhibit at OMSI that Bart wanted to go to, and he asked me to go with him." He looked at both of them, scrunching his eyebrows together, making it clear he didn't know why they were questioning him like this. "You don't need to worry. I'm not about to share your dirty little secret." Jack made air quotes with his hands. "Is that all you wanted to talk to me about? Because if it is, I have homework I need to catch up on after missing school today." And he stood up in an attempt to end the conversation. "No, that's not all we wanted to speak with you about, Jack. Please sit down," Earl said, and continued when Jack complied. "I suppose I can understand you not believing what I told you earlier. So, to help you trust what we are saying, I've decided to take you on a trip to Europe with me. Us, actually. Aunt Lizzie will be accompanying us this time." Earl paused, gazing at Jack. "We've decided it's past time for you to meet some of your extended family. The long line of magic workers I told you about earlier. We feel confident this introduction will be the best way to demonstrate to you the truth of what we are saying. It's important that you trust us, Jack." He looked at his wife for confirmation. Lizzie slowly nodded her head in agreement, but her eyes betrayed her lack of enthusiasm for what Earl said. It was all Jack could do to maintain his composure. His heart was racing, and his mouth was dry. He could feel sweat beating up on the palms of his hands. He licked his lips, then wiped both hands on his thighs before responding. "A trip to Europe?" he asked, wanting to buy some more time and gather more intel before he said any more. "Where in Europe, exactly?" "Sweden. We have family there who would very much like to meet you. All the arrangements have been made. We leave in the morning." Earl stood then, facing Jack. "Pack whatever personal hygiene items you might need. But don't worry about too many clothes. We'll do some shopping while we're there. Everything else will be provided for you. This trip will be an incredible opportunity for you, Jack. And you don't need to worry about homework, Lizzie said, as she also stood, smoothing her brightly colored silk robe and taking another sip of wine. I contacted the principal this afternoon and told him we are taking you out of the country on vacation. But he couldn't believe what he was hearing. I don't want to go to Europe with you, he spat it out, desperation taking over. He was frantic. How was Pop going to be able to rescue him if he was in Sweden? You'll enjoy it, Jack, believe me. Earl spoke soothingly, but it wasn't doing anything to... You'll enjoy it, Jack, believe me. Earl spoke soothingly, but it wasn't doing anything to calm the flurry of fear that was washing over Jack. No, I'm not going. Jack stood now and faced both of them directly. I don't trust you. Not only have you been lying to me most of my life, but I think you're both verifiably insane. And to top it all off, now you're even having me followed? It came out before he realized what he was saying. Lizzie and Earl froze, and slowly their expressions changed. Brows lowering, eyes narrowing. It was Lizzie who spoke next. Oh, yes, you will go with us. And if you think you have any choice in the matter, you little brat, you are sadly mistaken. She raised her left hand, flicking the thumb and index finger together, producing a bright orange flame, and slowly walked toward Jack. You want proof that magic exists? How's this for proof? She stopped a foot in front of him and held the flame so close to his nose that he could feel the intense heat radiating from it, nearly burning his face. Jack jumped backward involuntarily. Elizabeth. Earl spoke her name calmly, but with intent. You're frightening the boy. Put that away. He moved closer to the two of them. Lizzie extinguished the flame with a flick of her wrist, but didn't step away from Jack. Yes, and he should be frightened, self-entitled punk that he is. The disdain in her eyes was unmistakable as she glared into Jack's. Reluctantly, she turned to stand next to her husband. Please forgive your aunt, Jack. He turned to place a placating hand on his wife's shoulder. It's just that she knows how important our cause is, and how vital a role you play in the overall outcome. With time, you will understand. But I really must insist that you accompany us on this trip. It will make things much more pleasant for all of us if you come along willingly. However, he hesitated, locking eyes with Jack. We do have ways to compel you if you choose to remain uncooperative. He stared at his aunt and uncle, feeling a strange mixture of fear and amazement. His aunt had just produced fire from her fingertips right in front of him, and though the example had surely convinced and terrified him, his uncle's threat didn't go unnoticed. He couldn't even begin to imagine what force looked like when magic was involved. Okay, you convinced me. I'll go along with your crazy plan. You won't need to force me. Jack started to move toward the doorway, but they were blocking his path. Can I go to my room now? Apparently, I need to pack a bag, he said, waiting for them to move out of the way. Earl shot a meaningful glance at Lizzie, nodded his head, and they both stepped aside so that Jack could get by. Of course. There was a snide tone in his uncle's voice. Just one more thing. I'm going to need your phone. He held out his hand in Jack's direction. Jack turned and glared at him. What? My phone? Why do you need my phone? We can't have you contacting Bart or his father or anyone else about this trip, Jack. No last-minute schemes to get out of it. And just in case you're thinking about running off somewhere, that guy following you, his name is Victor, and he's posted outside your bedroom door. You don't want to mess with him. I'm no fool, Jack. Come on now, hand it over." He stood there with his palm up, waiting. When Jack made no move to retrieve his cell, Earl continued, "Do you really want to force the issue, son?" Those words ignited a fire inside him, and Jack dug deep into his pocket and pulled the device out, slamming it down into Earl's open hand. "I am not your son," he yelled, and he ran past both of them into the kitchen, grabbing his things, and dashed down the stairs to his bedroom. And that's the end of chapter 17. And we're right at 30 minutes, and I don't want the video to cut off, so I am going to end this quickly. I hope you've enjoyed this reading. If you have, please subscribe to my channel. Give me a thumbs up if you've liked it, and do be sure to ring the little bell so that you receive notification every time I upload new content, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Until Monday, I hope you guys have a great weekend. Please do feel free to leave me comments down below and let me know what you're thinking about the story, and I will look forward to reading more on Monday. Take good care.